Welcome back to the Mindbender Mental Performance Podcast.
Episode 143. Yes, episode 143. You're probably wondering where to find them all. A lot of them were banned for digital copyright music infringement. You can find them exclusively on nofilter.net. That's the world's premier live streaming, interactive event and podcasting hosting platform. All the other ones you can find on the nofilter.net YouTube page, No Filter Network on YouTube, and the most recent podcast will all be on Spotify and Apple Podcast. That's right. We are now on Spotify and Apple. Today, as mentioned multiple times, episode 143, we're inviting the soul to work, inviting the soul to sport. These are mental performance lessons from the great book, The Heart Aroused by David Whyte. Here we are, the Mindbender Mental Performance Podcast. As you guys know, it's the only podcast that former Licey baseball grade Enrique Barrenes says makes players fuerte en la cabeza. El lugar es aquí, el momento es ahora. Wherever you are, the place is here, the time is now. This is where we take it from the clouds into the dirt, where it can grow one episode at a time. Showing up, being present, knocking down mental and emotional barriers that get in the way of consistent and confident performance outcomes. Where the soul meets the grind. Today, we're going to take a hard look at something most athletes and coaches and programs even avoid like the plague, the soul. Before you roll your eyes and furrow your brow, let me tell you this: your soul is your edge. It's the part of you that doesn't just want to play the game. It wants to feel alive in the game. It wants meaning, purpose, and connection to something bigger. Without it, you're just punching the clock, going through the motions instead of growing through the motions. We're diving into the Heart Aroused, Poetry and the Preservation of Soul in Corporate America by David Whyte. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, what is this book? Why are we going through this book? It has nothing to do with baseball or sport, but I promise you, it's about as relevant as it gets. So, because the game, like life, will test you, it's going to shake you. You awake in a dark wood, just like Dante said. Quote, "In the middle of the road of my life, I awoke in a dark wood where the true way was wholly lost." End quote. That dark wood, that moment of confusion, doubt, and struggle is where growth happens. It's where the soul wakes up and starts to push back. The question is, are you willing to listen? Drama and the stakes. Sport and work as theater. Whyte says, work is drama. He's not being metaphorical. He's telling us the stakes are real. In baseball, the game itself is a stage. Every at-bat, every pitch, every decision is a moment of risk analysis. Whyte compares it to Shakespeare. All the world's a stage. We've all heard that before. The pitcher standing alone on the mound, that's Hamlet, staring down the ghost of his mistakes or his non-execution. The batter at the plate in a 3-2 count, that's Macbeth, caught between ambition and fear. Maybe there's, the stakes are high, right? You can strike out, fail, or lose the game. And the reality of that pressure, the nervous dry mouth, the pounding of the chest, is what makes the work matter. But the kicker is the soul needs that drama. It needs to feel the risk because, as Whyte puts it, the soul grows through experience, no matter what that experience may be. The next time you feel the weight of the moment, don't run from it. Lean into it. The stakes mean you're alive. Let's talk about the soul versus the personality. Control versus experience. Whyte breaks it down beautifully. The personality wants power over experience. It wants control. The soul wants power through experience, no matter how hard or messy it is. Think about that for a second. Most players and a lot of coaches are trying to control everything. their stats, their outcome, their reputation. They're rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic, as Whyte says, trying to force the uncontrollable into submission, even while the ship is sinking. But the soul doesn't play that game. The soul says, bring it on. The soul finds strength in the process, even when the results don't go your way. Let's take the example of a slump. The personality freaks out. I'm over 20. My coach is losing faith in me. Everyone thinks I'm done. That's the ego's desperate need for control. But the soul says, this slump is part of the game. What's the lesson here? Where can I grow? What am I doing well? What can I be doing better? How am I going to improve so I can execute the next time? It's like Whyte says, failure for the personality is a disaster. But for the soul, it's just the grist for the mill or the fuel for the growth. The players who get this aren't just tougher, they're more dangerous because they can face any adversity head on. Adversity becomes their advantage. Fear becomes their fuel. Failure becomes feedback. Let's talk a little bit about Dante's line, the dark wood, losing your way to find your way. There's a line in the book that hits like it really hits. Okay. What does it hit like? It hits like a good bass groove at an EDM show for all I don't know. He says, quote, it seems that to find the real path, we have to go off the path we are on now, even for an instant, and earn the privilege of losing our way. End quote. Whyte is telling us that sometimes you've got to stop, reassess, and face the dark. This applies to baseball in a massive way. Let's say you've been doing the same thing for months, same training, same mental approach, if any, but it's not working. You're in a rut. You're stagnant. Most people double down, afraid to admit they're lost. But the great ones, they get off the path. They take a risk. They ask some questions. They work on something new. Get comfortable with the uncomfortable, work on their weakness, and allow themselves to lose their way for a bit to come back stronger. In the book, David Whyte compares this to standing in a clearing in the woods, finally awake and seeing your life as it really is, not as you wish it were. And that's fucking tough. It takes courage to admit you're lost, but it's the first step to finding the way forward. For athletes, that means asking, am I truly all in on this process? Am I chasing outcomes or am I growing through the work? Let's talk about suffering in the soul. This is where growth happens. Whyte doesn't shy away from suffering. He says the soul needs it, like fire forging steel. There's a poetic truth to this. Without doubt, you never find belief. Without loss, you never understand what matters. Loss, learning, opportunity, stay strong. Without struggle, you never tap in to your deeper self. Suffering, whether it's a tough season, a devastating injury, or an off-the-field struggle, isn't a detour. It's the path itself. It's guiding you. It's where you confront the truth about yourself. Whyte puts it like this, quote, self-doubt is the soul's way of pulling us inward. It's not depression. It's a cry for something more. How many times have you been there? You're questioning yourself, feeling alone, maybe even ready to quit. But if you stay with it, if you listen to that cry, you'll find clarity and purpose on the other side. As Whyte says, the soul, quote, turns those workaday events into experience. Let's talk about bridging work and soul. Bringing the meaning to Sisyphus pushing the rock. This book is a call to action for anyone caught in this grind, whether it's corporate America, whether it's out on the field, whether it's at home in the middle of a relationship. Whyte reminds us that work and the soul don't have to be separate. The greatest players, the greatest organizations don't just work hard, they work with a purpose. Think about it. The soul finds joy in the struggle. It thrives on creativity, connection, and meaning. You don't play this game for stats alone. You play because it calls you, because you love the grind, because you find fun and enjoyment in it, because it gives you a chance to express who you truly are. You know, the great Enrique Bayroness always used to say, bring your personality to the game. Don't take it away from the game. The next time you step on the field, ask yourself, am I just showing up to work or am I showing up with my soul? Because when you bring your soul into the game, you're not just playing baseball, you're playing for something bigger. So here's some things you can do. Think about it as like a dark wood journal. After a tough game, a practice, write down where you felt lost, frustrated, or stuck. Write down a well, better, how. Then ask, what is this moment trying to teach me? Where can I grow here? How about an ego versus soul reflection? Before a game, ask yourself, am I playing for the outcome or am I playing to compete fully in this moment? Reset to the process. Think about off-path creativity. Throw shadow bullpens with mental imagery. For pitchers, hitters, step back and approach the game with a fresh mindset. Coaches, introduce a new mental drill or reflection exercises, like ball mental imagery and meditation. Introduce some release routines. Introduce a way to do a post-game execution journal. The Heart Aroused, this book reminds us that our greatest growth comes when we wake up in the dark wood, face the unknown, and let our soul do its work. The game doesn't just test your skills, it tests your spirit. Bring your soul to the grind, embrace the stakes, and don't fear the struggle. That is where the magic happens. Para mis jugadores latinos, más línea, más vida. Hasta el próximo recuerdo. Si quieres ser un jugador disciplinado, comprometido y preparado en el futuro, empiezas esa mierda hoy. Se necesita y lo mejor está por venir. Until next time, if you want to be a disciplined, committed, and prepared ball player in the future, you already know you start that shit today. And it takes what it takes. And if you choose, the best is yet to come.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.